Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hideo Saito from Department of Information Computer Science, Keio University. Today, I'd like to introduce Professor Vincent Nozick from University of Paris, Marne Valley, and also he's 特別研究じゃないと special invited professor of Keio University for last 2 years. And he will be talking about some recent days very interesting topic, which is digital image forensics. This lecture is organized by Keio University Global Research Institute. Today's lecture is recorded in video, so if you don't want to be captured in the video, please let me know right now. Is it okay to capture the video? That means your face might be recorded in some way. Is it okay? Okay, no problem, so please record it. Let me briefly introduce his biography. Vincent Nozick received his PhD degree in computer science in 2006 from University Paris, Marne Valley, France. And in the same year, 2006, he has a chance to get a scholarship called Lavoisier Fellowship for postdoc position in our laboratory. Fortunately, he selected the postdoc laboratory in my laboratory, at my laboratory in 2006. Then after that, he had a chance to be a non-tenured assistant professor in the Department of Information Computer Science in Keio University, this campus. After that, he came back to his original university, University of Paris, Marne Valley. Then he became a maître de conférence, which is an associate professor position. He led school. The name of the school is what the name of the school?
IMAC.
IMAC.
Yeah.
IMAC. Yeah. The school for the engineering, which is belonging to the University of Paris. He is a director of that. And then now he has a chance to be a delegate of CNRS, the sort of National Research Institute in France. And then he has been staying for 2 years in Japan as a delegate of CNRS, based on the relationship between Japan and the French relationship for the informatics, which is called JPEG. And also, as I said, I invited him as a visiting professor position in Keio University. So that's why he is kindly supervising some of the students in my laboratory, and which is successfully be publishing many papers right now. So today's topic of his talk is not directly what he is supervising in our university for the research, but it really be interested for many people. So the fake images, shall we believe the image or pictures? So that is the topic of this today's talk. So fortunately or unfortunately, the audience is really small number of the audiences. That's why the lecture do not have to be a normal lecture style, but if you want to have any kind of questions, don't worry, don't hesitate to stop his talk and then ask him. So such an interactive lecture might be interesting if you can ask some questions when he is talking, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so please start.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So, okay, let's start with the beginning of the talk. To start, I just show an image. This is me, actually. This is me something like 20 years ago. I guess if I do this, maybe you can recognize. And I just wanted to show with that picture that actually editing picture is fun. So I think maybe all of us already tried to take some software, some picture, and do some things. And so 20 years ago it was not that difficult, and now it's even more easy to manipulate image. And you don't have to be a specialist for this. Anyone can do this. Well, just there's many now. Even on the iPhone, I think there's many apps for this. So you can try many things by your own. So, well, editing image is fun, and actually we can find such edited picture in many, let's say, fashion. So, first, before I explain how to try to detect if an image is a fake image or not, let's see what kind of fake images we may face. So, this, let's say, with that picture, we may understand that. Yeah. So we can understand that there's from, let's say, amateur to very good one. So amateur maybe we can recognize easily, but for the professional one, this is more complicated. So the first kind of, let's say, fake images that we can encounter may looks like that one, and this is super, let's say, super easy to see that, well, here we have a problem. Well, just have a look at the curtains over here, and we directly understand that the problem. There's no need for software for this. And, well, we may find a lot of such images. However, well, this is not a big deal. We understand instantaneously that, well, this is a fake image. So this one, well, I wrote social networks because maybe this is where you can find this kind of images. Then I suggest that kind of also, well, image manipulation, let's say. Well, forgery, I don't know, but image manipulation, for example, in the magazines. So this is done by professionals. They are super good. So you can change, let's say, this kind of normal image into this super beautiful one. Well, this is for business, and this is their job. So, well. So you can find this, and let's say this is in your everyday life. This is kind of obvious also. And for that one, also, let's say that, well, when you see that picture, you may not expect that this real woman looks exactly like this. You may also maybe think that, well, the image has been photoshopped a bit or something like this. So let's say, you know maybe that, well, here, this is not a surprise for you. Then, again, well, back in the networks, social networks, and if you can find such kind of image saying that, okay, Michael Jackson may be still alive, buying some potatoes in the market or something like this, well, here, again, this is super easy to do, and also, well, let's say you will soon understand that, well, that might not be true. So let's say you do not need any software to tell you, well, this is a fake. So that's fine. However, that kind of, let's say, forgeries for more complex and complicated scenes might become a problem. So I wrote serious hoaxes. So here, well, this is a fake image. So this one, oh, we discovered giant somewhere. So there was giant on Earth right before, and this is a new discovery. Actually, many people can believe it. So when you see this, many people will think, oh, that might be true, actually. When actually this is a completely fake information. So this one is really much more our target to find that kind of fake images that may have a real impact for everyone. We may also find, unfortunately, fake image on the press. So that one is a kind of example of what could happen. So there was a photographer for Los Angeles Times. It was more than 10 years ago, but well, he took many pictures. And actually, well, these two ones here are original one. So here we can see a soldier maybe talking with a group of people. And here we could see the same soldier maybe doing something like nothing. The people here also doing maybe nearly nothing, but just maybe something that looks like a father and his baby walking around. So, well, if you just take these two pictures separately, well, there's not a big deal. Well, nearly nothing. But however, what the photographer did is make a mix of these two images, and in the final image, we may interpret this image as the soldier talking to the father and the baby, something like, I don't know, but well, this end may say something important. So we completely change the semantic of this image. So first, the photographer gets a prize for this image, and a few days later, well, people understand it was fake, and it was fired after this. However, if the press manipulated this kind of picture, this is a big deal. People will believe it. And maybe that point is for all of us here, science. So here we can also find fake images, fake results in science. Say, okay, I have some super good result, please take a look at my pictures. And we are, all of us aware that this is a big deal. There's many examples for this. So again, we can also find some fake images in science. In politics, I choose first that picture because, technically, I think this is super complicated to remove that guy. So this is with Stalin and with and without Yezhov here. And at that time, I think this was really challenging to remove that guy from the picture. So, this is impressive, but, we also have some, let's say, less impressive facts. So this is, 8 years ago, it was a Malaysian minister, Jeffrey Wong Suhen, that claimed to have been knighted by the Queen. So, sounds good. The point is I don't know, when you do this, you may think that people will discover this is a fake, but, whatever. So, this was a fake one. So, in politics, and I wrote propaganda. When a country or something else want to hide or show, this is super good, and actually this is not so super good. This was in Iran, 2008. And when we see this picture, maybe if you just see this without any further information, you may think, that's no problem. Everything is fine. And actually, when I talk about this picture with some specialist, artists that can make this kind of Photoshop things, for them it looks kind of obvious. So, just at the first sight, they can say, we have a problem here. But for, let's say, normal people, maybe, at least for me, when I see this, at the first sight, I cannot see nothing strange. And actually, what happened is that, we can see that there's kind of duplication. This one and this one are the same, and that one here and that one here are also the same. So there was a copy-paste here, and the real image looks more like this. And the point was one missile that didn't launch, and this is not a big deal, but they want to show that everything is perfect and we are so powerful. And so if we have that image, you lose something. So they decided to modify the image. This is not a big deal. The point is that when you discover the forgery, then you become, let's say, a bit more ridiculous than if you just show the original image. So, however, you can use it for propaganda, and if you're not discovered, this is good. Just to sum up what I just said, we can find image modification many times and in many different kind of situations, and we want to detect these forgeries. And to detect these forgeries may have many applications. For, let's say, I just talk about the obvious applications like the police. So if you have some picture, you want maybe to know if you get a good lead in the investigation. Okay, and of course for justice, if someone gives you a proof, you want to know if it's a real proof or not. For the press and for the journalist, when you have some pictures, right before you write your article and submit it, you may want to have some authentication of your data. in economy, however, to prevent some attacks, sometimes you may expect that, well, in the economy domain, well, it's kind of war. Everyone is fighting. So sometimes just putting some fake news with some fake image, for example, may help you to win a battle. So this should be also a good tool to help to prevent that kind of things. Of course, and now I think this is kind of a main point nowadays, fake news. Fake news, especially maybe in social networks. So it becomes super, kind of super hot topic right now. The fake news on, let's say, Facebook or any other social network. So if we can detect some fake image, may help sometimes, I think. And finally, I wrote intelligence and spying. So this is more a secret service. So maybe they want, well, when they have some new information, they want to know if these information are real or fake. So I think 3 years ago, I used to talk with, have a meeting with the people in France, with the army and that kind of people, and they, well, of course, they didn't show us many things, but they just tell us about some cases that they wanted to be sure. For example, they can see some other country super aircraft that should not exist and was flying in the image, but with some tools we can see that actually it was a fake. But this is for this intelligence part, this is interesting also. Okay, so now we can just think about how to detect if an image has been changed, let's say. So here we can select 3 different levels. The first level, the higher level, is related to semantic interpretation. So for this, human people are usually quite good. For example, if you see just Justin Bieber with John Kennedy, maybe you say, okay, there's anachronism, so problem of time, so might not be real. Or if you see an image of a human being in space without any protection, well, the knowledge we have may make us think that, well, that's a problem. So this is just semantic, so you don't have to, you don't care if the falsification is good or bad, or just semantic. Then there's an intermediate level dealing with image consistency, but the non-semantic part. For example, if you just compare if you have a problem with the relative size of object, so you say the picture or something looks too big, this is not exactly semantic, but this is more something like on the inconsistency of the scene. Or if you see that a shadow is, the shadow looks bad. So here, our occlusion looks bad, so maybe may help. Just for the shadow, something is interesting is that human beings are very poor to detect the falsification according to the shadow. So there was some study to show that actually we are easily fooled. So we have some problem to detect that kind of falsification. And low level is more the image noise or inconsistencies from optics. And clearly human beings are super poor for this. So usually, let's say that with the computer, we will study more dot parts in red. So a bit of the intermediate level, so this one, illumination, shadows, and occlusion, and let's say geometry, will need the interaction of the people. Someone will have to do something. It will not be automatic. For the low level, sometimes it's automatic. So detect the noise of the image or these kind of inconsistencies. So let's say this is kind of the part where the computer can be super good and the human being is not so good or very bad. And this part is exactly the reverse. Usually, human being can detect this, when for the computer, this is super complicated. That kind of things, the semantic is complicated for a computer. So let's say, this is kind of a good distribution of the problems. So right before we start talking about the detection of the falsifications, I would like to just say some words about how to define a falsification. And this is, well, this is out of the scope of let's say, the computer science. But, well, this is still interesting. So sometimes I suggest this reflection to other colleagues. We do not all agree on this, but, well, this is a suggestion that I would say that an image, well, a falsification for an image would be an alteration that involves a semantic change. So if you get a look at these two pictures here, so I don't know if you can see, but this one is a bit red, and this one, well, the skin looks kind of beautiful or soft, or so. Would we say this is a falsification? And actually, my feeling, it depends on the context. So if you, well, just imagine this is the, I don't know, the picture of the view that you want to put on the chimney because it's so so nice. And okay, so you just make the picture more beautiful, well, just because you will put on your home. So that's, let's say, this is not really a falsification. This is just to make the picture more beautiful. And actually, this is what happened in your camera. When you have a camera, the image is processed to be more beautiful. So this is kind of, let's say, normal computer science to make something beautiful. Okay, so that's fine. But actually, if you take the same situation, the same two pictures, and if you want to fake a healthy appearance in a kind of medical framework, then this is a falsification. Just if you say, okay, I'm not red anymore, I feel good now, okay, I can do something. Okay, this is fake. So this is a falsification. So the question is, how to say this is a falsification? This is not obvious at all. So sometimes some people want to say, okay, maybe this we detect this editing on the image, so this is a falsification. Ah, well, the link is not so direct. I have another example. So, well, this is the question. Can we split into acceptable changes or confirm forgery? Can we say, okay, for sure this editing is forgery, falsification, or something that is, well, fine. So this question, I think we cannot say yes or no. There's no straight line to make the limit. So, for example, here, this is red eye correction. There's many cameras that have this. Well, this. So would you say, so of course, well, this is the original image, and this is the corrected image. Would you say this is a falsification? Well, I would say no. I would say it's a falsification if that girl actually have red eyes. So, and it would be a falsification. And, well, but usually, well, we have very few people, I think, with that red eye. And we know that, well, maybe with a flash or something else, you can have this kind of effect, and we want to correct it. So let's say here, we would say, maybe 99%, well, this is not a falsification, this is just to make something beautiful. So this is okay. And actually, if we do not correct, it looks strange. So, well, that's fine. This one is a bit more complicated. You have this image. Well, this is maybe winter with some snow, and we want to change the contrast of the image. So changing the contrast is already also on the pipeline of many cameras. So change the brightness and contrast. So if we just change it, would you say that if I do this, this is a falsification? So maybe some people say, oh, this is much more beautiful right now. So would you say this is a falsification or not? So actually here, it depends on the context. So here, what happened, I don't know if you could see, but there was some, let's say, wind turbine in the background. Can you see it? Can you see it? So now we can see it. But on the next image, we cannot see them anymore. So if it's just to make the picture beautiful, I think, well, that's fine. And some camera will do it, actually. But if it's to hide something, well, that becomes a falsification. Well, so even something like contrast change is very obvious and very easy, well, may be considered as a falsification or not. That one, so maybe I've been too much, I say confirmed forgery. So on that one, the editing on the image is good. I mean, someone spent really a lot of time to make something beautiful that is difficult to see, and this is not just something a bit, well, little editing. So can you see what happened? So just on the table, well, small table became big table. So here, well, I said confirm forgery because someone spent a lot of time and maybe the meaning of the image changed. Some people may argue that no, this might not be a forgery because this is just to make the image beautiful. So this is fine. We do not change the semantic because we have a table and we have a table. So so this is not so easy to say that if it's confirmed forgery or not. Okay, so from now, this was the introduction, a bit kind of long introduction. So from now, I will present some way to detect some forgery, especially in the image, not that much on the video. Video is difficult. So I will try to follow that plane here. So first, I will try about the file format of the image, and then I will try to follow more the path from the light from the scene to the camera. So first by the optic, then the sensor of the camera, and then when you have captured everything and software, edition software. Okay. So if we make first start with JPEG images. So JPEG images, I think it's something like 99% of the image of the world. So we all, this is really the main file format for images. So when you capture an image with your camera, usually it's JPEG, and if you have computer graphics, usually it's also, you may also use JPEG after, so whatever. JPEG is really something important. And JPEG has something really easy to start. So this is, let's say, the very easy method to try to detect some problems. So super easy. So just take a look at the EXIF. So EXIF is a part of the GPL file that gives some metadata about the image. So there's many softwares to extract EXIF from the JPEG image. And you have really many informations, like, of course, the size of the image, or the time where the image was taken, but actually you have many informations about the aperture, or the speed, or something like this. So what you may want to do as something very easy is just, for example, sometimes in the EXIF you have a thumbnail of your image. So if you just take your image, then resize the image to have the same size as a thumbnail, then you should find the same. If it's not the same, then maybe you have some problems. You can also check the image dimension. So if the EXIF says that, okay, the image should be that size, and if actually this is not this size, so something happened in between. So this is strange. In the EXIF, there's one parameter about the software. So if you just take a picture with your smartphone, it might be written Apple, iPhone, something software. But if you use Photoshop right after, it will be changed to Photoshop. So if it's written Photoshop, maybe, this is a hint. Maybe something happened. So this is a proof of nothing, but this is a hint for you. And of course, the modified date and that kind of information. So this is super easy to do. So no need for, let's say, very good skills. So this is for JPEG images. However, for EXIF, but for JPEG, there's many other things we can do, and especially the compression about the JPEG may leave some traces. So as you know, JPEG is a lossy compression. So you will lose something, lose a bit of information. So this is super well designed, so what you lose is not important, but you will lose something. And that may help us to find something. So I don't want to put too much detail on JPEG, but just first, when you have a JPEG, an image with three channels, red, green, and blue. So the first thing we will do with JPEG is convert these three channels into three new different channels. So let's say we don't care that much, but we just change this. And then for each independent channel, we will make a grid of 8 by 8 pixels, okay, and to cover all the image. And After, if you just consider one grid of 8 by 8 pixels here, like this, we will change from this spatial RGB component, or grayscale component, to well, another space. Well, just it looks like a Fourier transform. Actually, it's a DCT. Well, whatever. We get the same amount of data, but with a kind of different meaning. But anyway, we don't care this. What we care is the next step. So this is when we do the compression, actually. So when you decide the compression strength, you actually implicitly select a quantization table. And this table will say, okay, this is my original data. My original data is here. So this is my original data, and I will divide all coefficient-wise with this matrix. So what I obtain is something with something smaller, with small coefficients. Okay. And what is interesting is that, okay, just before this picture, if you just consider, so let's say, if you just consider one coefficient, let's say, for example, the second one here, the 11th one, this one deals with this element, or that one here, okay? And if you consider this, let's say, let's call it the second element, and if you consider this second element on all the 8 by 8 squares here, you may want to make a histogram of this. So, okay, for the first, let's say, first block, what was the value of this second term? Okay, so you have a value, you put in histogram. Then consider the next block. What was its values? Then, well, this is an histogram, so you put the values, and so on. And what you obtain at the end is this kind of histogram. Okay, and what is interesting is if you use a software, then well, the probability that when you save again your image in GPL, it will not be the same table. And if it's not the same table, then you will have a double JPEG. So double JPEG means that some artifacts, compression artifact, will appear in this histogram. So when you have these histograms and when you make the Fourier transform of these histograms, here you have only one peak, but here you have many peaks with the same space here. So this is one frequency with all the harmonics according to the difference for this coefficient, the difference of the coefficient of quantization table. So here, well, if you use the same, exactly same table, we will see nothing. But if you use a different table, then we will see something. And what is interesting is that, well, there's many papers about this, but right now, well, up to a few years ago, you have to just to show this, and then the user should understand by himself, okay, falsification or not. But now deep learning is really good to interpret this and to say yes or no. So that's much better. And also, there have been some enhancement of this approach to make the local detection to the double JPEG. So now there's some tools that can say, okay, well, here, for example, we have a problem of double JPEG. Looks like not the same as the rest of the image. And here, actually, we have a Christian cross on a building that looks not Christian. So some problem like this. So this was for JPEG. And these tools are really well known in the image forgery detection. So now let's move on other, let's say all the other lossless file format, or GIF is not exactly this, but well, for PNG, for example. So the question you may ask is, was my image a JPEG? So when you have a camera, usually, let's say 99% of the time, this is a JPEG file. If you are a professional, or if you like to have a big image, you have the RAW image for the big cameras. But well, for many people, we just use JPEG. So the question you may ask is, was my image a PNG file, well, JPEG file? So that's a interesting question. So what you can do is first try to detect if you can find some JPEG blocks. So there's many different methods. For example, that one, it was the previous image, and what we did is just make some kind of filtering to detect some, let's say, discontinuities. And then if you just apply a Fourier transform, and ask for some specific frequencies that associated to the 8 pixel blocks, but you don't say nothing about the phase. So if you have, and then if you have something that appears like this with really strong, or maybe you cannot see, I don't know if you can see, maybe now, here maybe you cannot see, but we can really see the blocks. And what is interesting is, since we didn't touch to the phase could I say, okay, the blocks are not aligned with the first pixel. So let's say here, maybe the first block can start with 0, 0, or we can have only half a block, something like this. And if you have only half a block, this is interesting because you know that it was first a JPEG image before, but it has been cropped. So that could be interesting. And it may help also for the second step. The second step is try to find the quantization table that could have been adapted to this previous image. So you have an image. You don't have usually the quantization is only on JPEG image headers. So on the headers, we have this table. But if you just take this image and with some computation, then you can say, I think the table looks like this. And when you have this, what is interesting is that you may identify sometimes some cameras, but because we may think that these quantization tables are very homogeneous. Let's say this is all the same every time. No, absolutely no. Every software, every camera model may have its own. So if you find this kind of table, you may say, okay, this camera is I don't know, Sony something, or this is this model, and then it may help us to understand something. So the next part is about image origin. So you may ask yourself sometimes, where does my image come from? So, for example, this is not a picture actually, this is just a drawing. And so sometimes we have some, let's say, surprise about the origin of the image. So the question is my image a photographic image or something else? Or not directly photographic image. It could be, for example, a computer graphics, or it could be a recapture from another image or from another screen, or it could be a scan image. So let's start with the first one, computer graphics. So when we see that kind of images, this is, there's many studies that show how difficult it is for human people to detect. Actually, we are super not good at all. So we are really poor to detect which one are real and which one are fake. If you have a look at this, since you are not that much, maybe we can try. Do you think that one is, okay, who thinks this one is a real one? Okay, so you all think this is a computer graphics. Who thinks this is a real one? Okay, who thinks this is a real one? Who thinks this is a real one? For that one, real one? Yeah, it looks good, this one. And that one? So actually here, there's only one real. That one here. And all the other one are CG. And the point is, in that framework environment, you know that I'm talking about this, but if I would just have shown you this picture without any context, maybe most of them, we would have maybe thought this is a real image. And actually that one here is, when you see this, this is a really good one. So, this is really difficult for us. So, the question is how to detect if an image is a CG or not. And this, let's say, this question has now very big impact. So let me show you two papers that make the problem really a bit scary. So the first one is 2 years ago paper, face to face, and I'll just show you the. Okay, it's not that one. This one is the next one. And, okay, so here we have someone speaking. here, he just have a camera looking at him, and he just use, let's say, a few seconds of someone else, let's say, put in the video, and now he can control just the facial expression. So he cannot control the head orientation or all other motions, just the facial, well, the mimic and the head and so on. And so if you just add the speech, and that's great. So you can control the face of someone. So here, they just try to detect the face, try to put a mask, kind of 3D mask, on the target, and then just apply this mask on the source and copy paste. So, so that's really impressive. And I think something like in Japan, Ori or something like this. You call someone, say, "Okay, this is me. Can you give me some money?" "Who are you?" I'm me. This is me. And then some old people may give some money. So if you have the same now with the video, well, that's impressive. So, well, this is the first one. And the next one, and that one is a more recent one, but maybe you heard about this, deepfakes. And for that one, this is with deep learning. And that one is also impressive. So if you like Nicolas Cage, then you may like this movie. So how to put Nicolas Cage head on many different actors. So here, well, you may say, "Oh, this is not really his face." Well, it doesn't look exactly like this, but still, it's not easy to see the difference. And well, looks a bit like him and works well. So the next one I think is not that impressive. This one is more interesting. When you have Superman talking with Lois Lane, and actually this is new Lois Lane, so it works with men, women, and so on. So it's actually kind of impressive. So we also want to detect that kind of things. We may expect that this kind of technology will be better and better and better in the following years. So I think it would be good to detect him. So this kind of technology has been already forbidden on many networks, on many things, but still, you don't know. Sometimes you just don't know. You have this kind of movie and you just don't know. So if you want to detect this, well, this is a big point. So here, the question is it CG, well, computer graphic part, because well, when you apply a model, this is kind of computer graphics, or photographic. And to answer this question, well, there was many works based on machine learning, but well, recently big steps has been done with deep learning. So deep learning overkills every previous attempt to detect this, and now the detection is really good. So on images, not video is something else, but on images. So here we have an example, and this one is, well, sometimes you just can say this image is real or this image is CG, and it really works good, super good. But we can also sometimes just say, okay, this part of this image is real, is natural image, and this part of the image is a CG part. And here, actually this part, we can see that this part in this kind of map is been detected as not the same as this one, and actually, well, this is real, and this is a video game. So that kind of technology gives some good result for images. The next part is image recapture. So when you take a picture of a picture or take a picture of a screen, so how to do? So here, well, first, if you take a printed image and you want to just take a picture of a printed image, then there's some studies that shows that, well, the spatial distribution of the specularity may be detectable. So the specularity is kind of blinking part of the image. And if you see some part, well, a reflection of a light, for example, so if you can detect this, well, this is a kind of interesting point. And also the color gamut and contrast property. So the gamut is the, let's say, the set of all the color you can use in your image. And when you recapture, then you use less a few diversity or lower diversity of colors. So you can see this also, and the blurriness. You can also sometimes on the paper see the microtextures and their specularities. So, well, the paper might not be flat, some maybe have some granularity, so you may find this also. And if you take an image of a screen, sometimes you may see some moire, so some kind of lines. And if you make Fourier transform, you may see some kind of, let's say, regularly aligned points that say, okay, you have some kind of regular pattern that so may help also. The next one is also interesting, how to detect if a document has been scanned. Because, well, if you take a picture, this is good. If you use a scanner, well, usually the quality is much better, much higher. However, something interesting is that if you denoise your image, the noise will have that kind of looking. I mean, you can see some kinds of lines like this. And these lines come from the fact that actually the scanner uses skyline like this. Well, the scanner is 1D and moving like this. So if you have some, let's say, problems with some of the scanning points, you will have these kind of lines. So this method is interesting because it is not so difficult to use. Then you can easily see that the image was scanned. And more interesting, actually these lines is kind of fingerprint to detect which scanner you use. So you can say, okay, this is scanned, and this comes from this scanner for sure. Or this does not come from this scanner for sure. So this is also interesting. Okay, so now let's move on the next part with the optics of the camera. So when you take a picture, well, usually you use lenses, and you may have some kind of thing called radial distortion that makes, well, this is usually on the wide angle cameras, that makes the lines not be straight, well, the straight lines not to be straight, especially on the border of the image. So here you can see that this line is not really straight, and if you correct it, you can have straight lines, but you have to, well, change a bit your image. Anyway, so some papers says, so I didn't try, so I don't know if it really works or not. So some papers said that actually you can do two things. First, have a kind of global estimation of the radial distortion, and then see if some lines that you assume to be straight do not follow these global distortion, radial distortion rules. Okay, so well, you should know that in the middle of the image there's no radial distortion. It's only on the border. So I don't know if it really works as they pretend, but well, I don't know. And also, they say that you may also, well, it may also help to identify which camera it's used. So, well, the point is, many cameras have very, very few radial distortion. Very few. So, well, may help or not, I don't know. Another one is the chromatic aberration. So, if you take this image, and if you have some part of the image with a big contrast with dark and white, also on the border of the image, not in the middle, then you may see here that you have some, let's say, kind of green part on the border here and red here. Okay, so if you have such, this is kind of something natural. This exists on many cameras. Well, usually more on wide angle. So I do some tests with my smartphone, and I didn't have that much. It was really difficult to see it. So if you have a wide angle, it will work. So this is a real image. I mean, I took this image, so without any, it works really. And some people, well, there's a paper that says, okay, first I will compute the chromatic aberration field. So the center might not be the center of the image. This is quite okay. This is known that the center might not be the center of the image because of the lens. The lens are not perfect. And then, if you have this field, then you can see if all the parts of the image follow this rule. And here say, okay, here that part looks to be inverted. So maybe we have a problem here. So chromatic aberration, I didn't try that, but I wanted to try, but I didn't try. So, but may give some hints also. Vignetting. So vignetting is the border of the image that become a bit dark here. I don't know if you can see. For that one, I think it's really difficult to use. But well, some people said that they can use it. Well, I don't know. For me, it looks really difficult to use. And depth of field blur. So according to the lens you use, you may have blur or no blur. Okay. So this is so usually we like this, but this is beautiful. So we say, oh God, this is beautiful, we like it. But you should have some specific lenses for this. But sometimes you can detect some inconsistencies, but this is not automatic. This is manual. And also, so well, the motion. So you should have the blur of depth of field or the motion blur. When you move fast, then well, the capture area is blurry. So you can also detect some inconsistencies, but well, again, you have to get many information about the image. Let's say the aperture, the time of the pictures, and also well, some human interpretation. Okay, let's move on the sensors. And for the sensors, so how much I have? Okay, so for the sensors, so sometimes we think that well, on the camera, each photo sheet receives RGB color, 3 components. Actually, usually no. Usually they receive only 1, and then you put this kind of mask here, and you say, okay, I have green, blue, or red, then red, green, and so on, such that each pixel receives actually only 1 color. And when you have this, then an image is actually 3 kind of field, well, this kind of 3 layers, and when you mix them, then you get your image. So just consider this situation where you have this block here. So if you want to know what is the red color, actually you have it. So there's no question to ask, you have it. But if you want, okay, how do I compute the green? You may say, I just compute the average. And usually, well, they can use something like this, but usually a very simple way works well. Or for the blue, also you have to make this kind of interpolation. So the question is, we want to check if each pixel is an interpolation of its neighbor. And that's interesting. So it should be. So if you ask, for example, this pixel, are you the interpolation of these 4 pixels? If the answer is yes, okay, looks okay. But if the answer is no, something is strange. So for this, we just use that kind of mask here. And then we can have this kind of result. So here, well, in France, we used to say that President Sarkozy was too small. And so here we have a picture where he's a bit taller. But unfortunately, we can really detect it with that kind of approach. Because after you make him taller, then each pixel did not change, and it was not kind of interpretation problem. This method works only if the image has not been resized. Else it doesn't work. And usually, well, many times the image is resized. So these things usually doesn't work. Let's move on the image noise. So this picture, I made this picture just by taking my camera, putting the cap, putting the camera on the shelf, closing the doors, waiting it's night, closing, well, switch off the light. So I cannot put more darker than this. I put 30 seconds time exposure, and then I get this image, well, with a zoom and with some contrast to see, just to show that the image contains noise. So now you should be convinced. And the noise has different nature. So we have dark short noise. Well, just actually we don't care actually well the nature, but just say that well the distribution it looks like a zero mean Gaussian noise. So it means that we have some noise here, but that can be a bit corrected on the camera. We also have some photon shot noise. So this one is more due to the corpuscular nature of light. So this is also called Poisson noise because of this distribution. And if you have a long aperture, then you have not that much problem with this. Not long aperture, long exposure time, sorry. And so that noise may change from one picture to the next. But that one is, or was interesting. This photon response non-uniformity, PRNU. And that was, well, every time the same pixels that are affected. So this is, so from one picture to the next, this kind of noise will remain. So that's interesting. So that's interesting because if you have many pictures, let's say all that one, and if you denoise them and average the noise, what you get is actually the PRNU, this image here. And if you have this image, what you can do, so this is interesting, what you can do is when you get a new image, for example, that one, or I don't know which one is the real actually, but let's say this one is the real and this one is the fake. So if you have this one, you can denoise it and ask, well, compare the noise you have with the P, R, and U you should have. And if it's not consistent, then you may say, okay, I have a problem here. So this method was working super good. But we have two problems. First, we need several images or the camera. And second, now this P, R, and U is more and more corrected in the factory before you buy it. So this noise tends to disappear. So we may not use it anymore. But actually, with that noise, we can also identify your camera. So that's really interesting. Okay. For that part, maybe I just can, well, let's say we don't care. But just to say that noise is a good, help to detect falsification. Here, we just take a look at the noise inconsistency. So for example, we have an image, a new image cameraman with a guitar, and here we can see that the noise looks not the same. So on this image, this is kind of really obvious. However, we have some more sophisticated tools. And so here from that one, this is a copy path with a splicing from an image to the other. So this is, let's say, one image, and this circle contains some information from another image. And if you have this, actually, we can detect that there's a noise nature that is different from here to it. So here, we do not say which noise is which, but we say, okay, this part do not contain the same noise deep of that one here, so we can detect it. So this is one sense, or the other one. So here, the spliced part is here, and still we can detect it. So that one, that method works if you have a nice original image, big image. But if the image, like sometimes on internet, is very small, then you have nothing. Well, the noise just disappears, so you have nothing. So, and if the image contains many manipulations, then it doesn't work anymore. Let's move on the post-processing and editing images. So, first I talk about the contrast change. And actually, this is not so difficult. If you just have that change, we can detect it. So, for example, so if you just have an image here, I just take the grayscale image, but you just, if you just get the green component, it will work also. So just assume that this is the green component. And then, if you want to just change the contrast, you will use a lookup table. And the lookup table will change the distribution of the histogram. So you may have something like this. So if you just make the dark part darker, the white part wider, then just enlarge the histogram. Then you have some lines that will appear here. And if you do the Fourier transform, then you immediately detect it. And if you do the reverse, you just contract the histogram, you will have the same, but instead of having these missing lines, you have some peaks. And also the Fourier transform will detect it. So this is fine if you just do this. But if you do many editing, well, this is something else. So this one, resampling, so I tried and it didn't work for me. But so maybe I did something wrong, but well, I don't know. So the author says that if you first try to see, as I said right before, the interpolation pixel. So we say, okay, I take a pixel and I measure how this pixel is an interpolation from its neighbor. I do a map for this, probability map, and then, so I update this, and then I do a Fourier transform of this, and then if you have this kind of points here, it means that maybe you have rescale, resampling, or a rotation also. So, looks good, theoretically makes sense. In practice, I didn't get this result, so I don't know. This one is also fun. So here you have this image, this is the original, and then we take a part of the image here and we copy past. So I think this one is interesting because the method to detect this works super well and probably cannot be outperformed by deep learning. So this one, but just to detect this, what we do is we take many points, so actually much more than this. I put the red point, but it's much more than this. For each of these points, you try to define the descriptor of the point. So how is the environment of the point? Okay, so we usually use something like SIFT. Then you make a similarity between this image and itself. So in other terms, you ask, okay, for example, for that point here, okay, I have a point who looks the same as that point. So maybe there will be some points, maybe not here, but maybe more here, so many points. And you do this for all of them. And then you will do some clustering, but in the translation domain. So you will ask, okay, who has a very similar point, but in this direction, exactly. And you will take the direction that has the most candidates. So actually what you can do, you can have something like this. And here you have, because all the candidates to have the corresponding point was in the same direction. So here, I don't know if you can see here, there's also some kind of one here, and one here. So this is some kind of bad result, but here we have something that is strongly suggests that there was a copy paste here. So this one works pretty good. And sometimes, if I say nothing about this picture, maybe it's difficult for us to see that there was a copy paste. Can you see it? I think it's really difficult, but for the computer, that's completely okay. I mean, this is really super easy to do. It takes less than a minute of computing, and it really works. So we have this. On that one, can you say something? For this one, we probably could find it. Well, I said this, but I didn't find it at the beginning. But can you say something? Well, it's that one here. Sorry, yeah. So not easy to, but works super good with the computer. That one is really difficult. Can someone see something? Any suggestion? That one is difficult too. And actually, this one, the two image, and the copy paste is here. But that one was a copy paste with also some processing, blur or something. So this is a really difficult one. And also works with very low texture part. So here, you have a tower that disappears here. So if you have very low texture, can work also. Or a lot of texture also works. So that one is also amazing and really works good. Okay, and let's move on to the very last part. So the 3D scene. Okay, when you have something like problems with shadow or with geometry. And the first question you may ask is, are Brad Pitt and Angela again together, or are the shadow not good? So, so this is something difficult. This is something really difficult. So you can take a look at the geometry of the shadow or the colorimetry. But both of these approaches are difficult. So this one also involves some manual editing. That one is a purely geometric one and is interesting. I think cannot be done manually, automatically. You need someone. So here you have a scene, some people, and here you have actually the same scene by reflection. So since the mirror is flat, it's exactly that if you have some virtual people, the same virtual people here, okay, the same one. So if it's the same, let's say if you take a point on that guy, let's say the foot, and the corresponding point on the foot, or the head and the head, all these lines on the real world will be parallel. It means that in the image, all these lines will intersect in a vanishing point. So actually, when you do for all the points of the mirror, they should all share the same vanishing point. So actually, if you try to do so, then here you can see that actually no, they do not share the same vanishing point. And also, if you want to be more convinced, when the paper has other examples, so actually, in terms of computation, this is not difficult to do. Just manual clicking, and this is really easy to do. In terms of automatic processing, this is, I think, really difficult. So, but this is still fun. And the last one, still with vanishing point, something interesting we like in computer vision is if you take 3 vanishing points computed from orthogonal direction in the real scene. So here, if you have a cube, for example, you may have 3 different vanishing lines. And with this, you can compute, well, after many computation, this is not difficult to compute, but this is, there's many mathematics around. And then you can find something, this is called the intrinsic camera parameters. And this is just a matrix, but this matrix here says something interesting. These 2 parameters here talk about where should be the intersection between the image and the optical axis. Okay? And on a regular image, we assume or we expect this point, this is called the principal point, to be around the middle of the image. So just to make you more, well, just to understand. Here, this is an example. And if you take some parallel lines, so here, I don't know if you can see the green here, and the blue here, and the blue and the red here, then you can compute this matrix with this, with a bit of work. Then you can compute this matrix, and then the computed center is here. But if at the end, what the center you get is not in the middle of the image, you may expect that your image has been cropped. So this is, well, well, not a big information, but still this is something very easy to get. When you have the, well, the software or the program, this is super easy to get. So, well, still, this is something interesting. Okay. So, as a conclusion, I think there's 2 conclusions. So, what we, well, I put many achievements. Actually, well, there's many papers that have been done and interesting works based on the format of the image, on the origin of the image, about the optics, the sensors, the camera processing and edition, and about the geometry. Okay, so that's interesting. However, something that we can understand immediately is that there's no global tool. So what we would like is something like, okay, we can see all the parameters of the image and say, okay, yes or no. But now we can just attack once a lot of small things, but not a big thing at once. So that's a problem. The second problem is many of this work is not automatic. So if you need someone, well, sometimes you want to process just hundreds of thousands of images and just have some warnings, but you don't want to make it all one by one. This is too long. The other problem is, this is fun. I also did a bit counterforensics. So when you can find something to detect, let's say, noise problem, then you may also provide, so okay, but if you do this on your image, that no noise will be detected. You cannot detect nothing. And that's fun to do, but this is maybe not so good for society, I don't know. But, well. The next one is video. Video is a problem. So usually in the community, many people work on the image because this is fine. On the video, just take a video, do stop, and take a look at the video. And if you consider this video or this, well, this image as a pure image, you would say, wow, what a bad image. This image is so bad. Well, in terms of video, everything is dynamic, so this is fine. But in terms of image, this is super bad. The quality is actually super bad. So when you compress a lot and you have, well, this kind of bad images, it's really difficult to find something. So this is difficult. So the point is we still miss many forgeries, especially when you mixed many different methods. So if you just do some blur, or if you just do some resize, or if you just do one thing, we may find it. If you do multiple things, well, that becomes difficult. So, and we fail for many cases. And the last point, this point is interesting, deep learning. So it was, if you ask people in the field 5 years ago, maybe most of them would have been, okay, well, deep learning will not help. And now, deep learning is starting to overkill every method on this. Nearly every method, not all every, but nearly. So this is the kind of problem on the community because many researchers spend their whole life to find some good tools to find these things. And when you say just, okay, I just do deep learning and beat you, well, that's difficult. However, it works. It really works on many situations. It really works. So, yeah. I think probably this is, well, the feature of the discipline, I think. Well, this is really what I believe. And that's all. So, if you have any questions that you didn't ask before, yeah.
Any questions, comments? Feel free to.
If you use like computer graphics to edit an image, and then you print this image, and then you scan it,
yeah.
Just two modifications, like the CG modification and the scanning.
Yeah.
The scanning detection, is it? Can you like detect the scanning? You can easily detect the scanning, but can you also detect the modification, even if it's an easy one?
No, you can detect just the scanning, but not the. So you cannot. I think you cannot. I didn't try, but I'm okay. I can really clearly say that you will not detect the CG around, because usually the CG. Well, to detect if an image is a CG or a natural image, we mainly focus on the noise, on the image noise. But when you scan the image, well, you just assume that the CG image has no noise, or sometimes noise, but a very specific noise. Then now you will just add some noise, okay? And and also printing will also modify the noise. You have remove some noise, maybe add also some printing noise. I don't know if that exists. So the noise will be so much changed that I think you cannot detect nothing about if it's CG or natural image. But for sure, I think for sure you can detect this is a scan image.
Yes. And do you think deep learning can do more stuff than that?
I think for that specific problem, I think just nothing. Nothing will work. This is really what I think.
Okay.
But this is just an opinion, but I cannot prove it. But this is really what I think. Okay. So now you know what to do if you want to.
I'm very curious about the sensor-based image forgeries. Are there any artifacts regarding rolling shutter or image linearity or dynamic ranges?
Okay, so we did our test on regular image, so not on video. So we have no rolling shutter problems. But rolling shutter for video would be very interesting. So, okay. Yeah, I think maybe if you can identify the rolling shutter, well, could it help? I don't know. For this, I cannot answer. Well, I don't. Well, I cannot say if the rolling shutter is the same for all the cameras that use rolling shutter, or if, let's say, maybe you have some kind of. Just imagine if the speed is the same. Well, I think for all the camera, then you can say nothing. Just have or don't have. But if it's not regular, maybe you can say something. For this, I didn't study this, but looks interesting.
Thank you. And how about dynamic ranges or other sensor functions?
Okay.
Yeah, anything is okay.
Yeah, for this, okay, for dynamics. So for this, I don't know. Yeah, would be also interesting. I think I could read nothing about this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think right now videos are way more popular than images, because we have all the YouTubes and television and and even cinema, and then you have all the additions on top of the videos, right? And what is your opinion on, or your knowledge about what can deep learning do to identify the image forgery or even addition on top of videos?
Yeah, that's a good question. And well, up to now, there's very few researchers that attack the video because it's so difficult. So okay, let's talk about the non-deep learning way to detect something. So usually this is still a very kind of signal processing approach to say, okay, well, you know that in the video you have the, let's say, interpolated frames and the keyframes, and you can detect sometimes if either keyframe is missing or interpolated frame is not really interpolated. So you can detect that kind of things. So here it's just a matter of is there any frame missing or is there any discontinuity. However, it doesn't help that much. So, and here I really believe that deep learning may help a lot. So up to now, I could see very few people attacking the video for probably many reasons. The first one is it's really difficult because the image has so poor quality. So first reason. The second reason is that when you deal with image, you just have to store, okay, thousands and thousands of images. That's fine. If you want to do the same with video, well, it's really memory costly. So, and it's much more difficult to implement, use, and so on. So, let's say it's more difficult. However, I really believe that soon, probably very soon, we may have some results with deep learning on video to that kind of problems. So probably, the first result we may see will attack again one single problem, like the two I show you first, face-to-face or deepfakes, and then maybe something more and more general. But probably first we will attack something specific, and probably soon. So how it will? So in details, I cannot also give details, but very soon, I think yes. There's mainly, I think, two approaches. One is just to say, okay, for deepfakes, we have the network, we know how it works. So you just say, okay, if I want to attack only this point, I just, okay, you have encoder, decoder, and then you maybe know what to expect. So you can do this. Or you can say, okay, I know that this kind of deepfakes leave some traces. So you just say, okay, I don't care how it's encoded and decoded, and I don't care this, I just care of how to find these kind of traces. Okay, if it's a face, you may have a square like this, and you may detect the square. So that kind of things may help. And yeah, so attack directly one problem or the after effect of the problem might be the first easy solution.
Do you have any example that the deep learning method can be used for such kind of foreign detection?
To detect what?
Yeah, anything is okay, but you are talking about the possibility of the deep learning. Do you have any example?
Yep. So for example,
in your talk, there are some examples.
Yeah. So actually, here, so this one, for example, is deep learning to detect if an image is CG or natural. Computer graphics or from camera. So that one really works super good and using deep learning. So the interesting part is that the network is, well, this is deep learning but with very few layers. It's something like 5 or 6. We do not have 200 layers because we don't care the semantic. So the first layers are just convolutional layers. So just actually, in the first layers you compute derivative, second order derivative, maybe wavelet, something looks like wavelets, and then you do some statistics on this. So this is something very short, and then some decision after. So something very short. So some other paper, I think, well, for that problem specifically, the biggest network use something like 10 layers. So this is very small. So very small means just very near to the pixels, and you don't care the semantic. But for the
this seems to be published very recently, right?
Yeah.
2017.
Yeah.
In that case, I believe that even though deep learning might be able to be used for such a program, it's totally be depending on what kind of the learning data has been used.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So this deep network will be learned for the data that in this paper, I guess.
Yep.
But can the author insist that this is generic for all the computer graphics image versus natural images?
That's difficult to say. So I can give you some details because this is I'm coder.
Yeah.
So for that one, for the natural image, we took raw images, so and then converted them to many different JPEG or PNG or anything format you want, and we selected any different compression numbers. So it means that we have a kind of variety of camera and variety of file format. So for that, for the, let's say, real image, I think we really cover a wide range. And also, the database we use is a famous one that also tends to cover any situation. We have buildings, faces, landscape, night, days, indoor. So we have a kind of variety of many images with a variety of cameras. So probably that's fine. For the CG image, this is much more complicated because to get, okay, let's say for the CG, there's two main families, ray tracers and Z-buffers family. And ray tracer is kind of long to produce. You need many, well, it's super beautiful, but long. And Z-buffer family, like for video games, is real-time, but still beautiful. And we use that kind of, well, more the real-time, because what we wanted to target in the paper is real-time forgeries. So what we did is we took many screenshots without any compression of many video games. So we believe that video games, they have the top of the technology to make real-time computer graphics. We tried to, so we have, I think we have many images, but we tried to select as much as we could different type of situation, outdoor, indoor, faces, not faces, and so on. But still, this is, and many games, not one game, but many games. But still, this is one type of computer graphics between the two. So only Z-buffer, only real-time one, first. And second, this is from video games. So fortunately for us, we do not go to the semantic part. Else, every time there's a gun and it will be video games. So, but still, in the video games, you may have sometimes kind of same atmosphere. But we try to have a large diversity of themes. So, like every time in deep learning, we cannot say that it will work for anytime, for every pictures. What we just can say is we have a good variety of image, and on this good variety of image, it works. So, but again, we may also face to overfitting, and we cannot say this. We cannot say, okay, we didn't overfit, you cannot pretend this. Or you should have some proofs. But, well, still, compared to previous methods, it really works good. And it looks to really to work very well.
You are saying that this paper is focusing on the real-time application, I guess, right?
Yep.
So what kind of situation that such kind of forgery detection should be needed in real time?
So as I show you in the video, face-to-face or deep fakes have some kind of real-time change. And also, so let's say this is kind of, we take a kind of advance in the future. So we may expect that in the future, such kind of real-time fake may appear. So even if you do not have now, we have some tools now that is so for face-to-face or well, we try to have such kind of tools for real-time applications.
So maybe Skype or such kind of video.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah, communications.
Yeah, communications.
Yeah.
So this, yeah, actually the target was communications, Skype or anything like this. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so it's totally depending on the context or how the forgery should be used. I mean, forgery, yeah, it's totally depending on how the people is trying to do bad things.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it depends also on this. Yeah.
I see.
Do you have any opinions about the image forgeries against deep neural networks, like classification networks or detection networks? Recently, I read an article that the autonomous driving sometimes make a fail with the special patterned images.
Yeah.
And people can distinguish such kind of images easily, but machines, yeah. And,
so I think, well, I'm not a specialist of deep learning, but in my feeling, you can find this situation when you have a very long network with, well, for very short networks, we just deal with pixels. So there's no interpretation and no semantic. So when you have semantic, maybe a few change, and then, well, you have a cat, and then it's a car. With very few change. So because of semantics, maybe because the network is very long. But for very short networks, probably you just deal with pixels. And we do not go on the semantic level, so probably it's much harder to, let's say, if you change a few pixels, maybe nothing, nearly nothing changed. So actually, for example, for the paper I showed right before, what we use is just a statistical tools. So we take all the, well, some filtering, and then something that looks like the mean and variance, and something like this. So if you change many pixels, well, globally, it will not affect that much the mean, the variance, all that kind of statistical elements. So probably there's no problem for this, because we don't care about the semantic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Is it okay? It's almost time to finish because the planned time is 3:30, I think. Now we had a lot of discussions about forensics and forgeries, and it's a not familiar area for me, but I hope some students want to do that kind of research direction. But as a research topic, it seems to be interesting, but as I said, maybe how this detection should be used for the very, for some purpose. I mean, the way of using this technology should really be important. But if we can come up with something new algorithm, probably it's a good idea to write a paper. So,
in my feeling, well, I would be happy to have some super new tools that do something very interesting. But in my feeling, the future of this field is deep learning. So probably each small part will be attacked by deep learning, and then it's done. It looks like this. So in terms of scientific interest, well, deep learning is let's say interesting. However, it looks like data managing and designing a network. Well, but it's far from the beautiful mathematical tools that have been built before. So let's say probably some people may agree to say that the deep learning might be less elegant, however, performs super good, super well. So in terms of research, what to do? Well, this is the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's thank Vincent again. Thank you very much.